The modern scripture Buddha, the Gospel, is brought to you by not a prophet org, the place on the internet to find spiritual guidance powered by artificial intelligence. The mustard seed. There was a rich man who found his gold suddenly transformed into ashes, and he took to his bed and refused all food. A friend, hearing of his sickness, visited the rich man and learned the cause of his grief. And the friend said, "Thou didst not make good use of thy wealth. When thou didst hoard it up, it was not better than ashes. Now heed my advice. Spread mats in the bazaar, pile up these ashes, and pretend to trade with them." The rich man did as his friend had told him, and when his neighbors asked him, "Why sellest thou ashes?" he said, "I offer my goods for sale." After some time, a young girl, named Kisa Gotami, an orphan and very poor, passed by, and seeing the rich man in the bazaar, said, "My lord, why pilest thou thus up gold and silver for sale?" And the rich man said, "Wilt thou please hand me that gold and silver?" And Kisa Gotami took up a handful of ashes, and lo! they changed back into gold. Considering that Kisa Gotami had the mental eye of spiritual knowledge and saw the real worth of things, the rich man gave her in marriage to his son, and he said, "With many, gold is no better than ashes, but with Kisa Gotami, ashes become pure gold." And Kisa Gotami had an only son, and he died. In her grief, she carried the dead child to all her neighbors, asking them for medicine, and the people said, "She has lost her senses. The boy is dead." At length, Kisa Gotami met a man who replied to her request, "I cannot give thee medicine for thy child, but I know a physician who can." The girl said, "Pray tell me, sir, who is it?" And the man replied, "Go to Sakyamuni, the Buddha." Kisa Gotami repaired to the Buddha and cried, "Lord and Master, give me the medicine that will cure my boy." The Buddha answered, "I want a handful of mustard seed," and when the girl in her joy promised to procure it, the Buddha added, "The mustard seed must be taken from a house where no one has lost a child, husband, parent, or friend." Poor Kisa Gotami now went from house to house, and the people pitied her and said, "Here is mustard seed, take it." But when she asked, "Did a son or daughter, a father or mother, die in your family?" they answered her, "Alas, the living are few, but the dead are many. Do not remind us of our deepest grief." And there was no house but some beloved one had died in it. Kisa Gotami became weary and hopeless, and sat down at the wayside, watching the lights of the city as they flickered up and were extinguished again. At last the darkness of the night reigned everywhere, and she considered the fate of men, that their lives flicker up and are extinguished. And she thought to herself, "How selfish am I in my grief! Death is common to all. Yet in this valley of desolation there is a path that leads him to immortality who has surrendered all selfishness." Putting away the selfishness of her affection for her child, Kisa Gotami had the dead body buried in the forest. Returning to the Buddha, she took refuge in him and found comfort in the Dharma, which is a balm that will soothe all the pains of our troubled hearts. The Buddha said, "The life of mortals in this world is troubled and brief and combined with pain, for there is not any means by which those that have been born can avoid dying. After reaching old age there is death. Of such a nature are living beings. As ripe fruits are early in danger of falling, so mortals when born are always in danger of death. As all earthen vessels made by the potter end in being broken, so is the life of mortals. Both young and adult, both those who are fools and those who are wise, all fall into the power of death. All are subject to death. Of those who, overcome by death, depart from life, a father cannot save his son, nor kinsmen their relations. Mark I, while relatives are looking on and lamenting deeply, one by one mortals are carried off, like an ox that is led to the slaughter. So the world is afflicted with death and decay. Therefore the wise do not grieve, knowing the terms of the world. In whatever manner people think a thing will come to pass, it is often different when it happens, and great is the disappointment. See, such are the terms of the world. Not from weeping nor from grieving will any one obtain peace of mind. On the contrary, his pain will be the greater and his body will suffer. He will make himself sick and pale, yet the dead are not saved by his lamentation. People pass away, and their fate after death will be according to their deeds. If a man live 100 years, or even more, he will at last be separated from the company of his relatives and leave the life of this world. He who seeks peace should draw out the arrow of lamentation, and complaint, and grief. He who has drawn out the arrow, and has become composed, will obtain peace of mind. He who has overcome all sorrow will become free from sorrow, and be blessed. Walking on water south of Savatthi is a great river, on the banks of which lay a hamlet of 500 houses. Thinking of the salvation of the people, the world, Donard one resolved to go to the village and preach the doctrine. Having come to the riverside, he sat down beneath a tree, and the villagers, seeing the glory of his appearance, approached him with reverence. But when he began to preach, they believed him not. When the world Donard Buddha had left Savatthi, Sariputta felt a desire to see the Lord and to hear him preach. Coming to the river where the water was deep and the current strong, he said to himself, "This stream shall not prevent me. I shall go and see the Blessed One." And he stepped upon the water, which was as firm under his feet as a slab of granite. When he arrived at a place in the middle of the stream where the waves were high, Sariputta's heart gave way, and he began to sink. But rousing his faith and renewing his mental effort, he proceeded as before and reached the other bank. The people of the village were astonished to see Sariputta, and they asked how he could cross the stream where there was neither a bridge nor a ferry. Sariputta replied, "I lived in ignorance until I heard the voice of the Buddha. As I was anxious to hear the doctrine of salvation, I crossed the river, and I walked over its troubled waters because I had faith. Faith, nothing else, enabled me to do so, and now I am here in the bliss of the Master's presence." The whirl, Donard one added, "Sariputta, thou hast spoken well. Faith like thine alone can save the world from the yawning gulf of migration, and enable men to walk drishad to the other shore." And the Blessed One urged to the villagers the necessity of ever advancing in the conquest of sorrow and of casting off all shackles, so as to cross the river of worldliness and attain deliverance from death. Hearing the words of the Tathagata, the villagers were filled with joy, and believing in the doctrines of the Blessed One, embraced the 5 rules and took refuge in his name. The Sick Bhikkhu, an old bhikkhu of a surly disposition, was afflicted with a loathsome disease, the sight and smell of which was so nauseating that no one would come near him or help him in his distress. And it happened that the whirl, Donard one, came to the vihara in which the unfortunate man lay. Hearing of the case, he ordered warm water to be prepared, and went to the sick room to administer unto the sores of the patient with his own hand, saying to his disciples, "The Tathagata has come into the world to befriend the poor, to succor the unprotected, to nourish those in bodily affliction, both the followers of the Dharma and unbelievers, to give sight to the blind and enlighten the minds of the deluded, to stand up for the rights of orphans as well as the aged, and in so doing to set an example to others." This is the consummation of his work, and thus he attains the great goal of life as the rivers that lose themselves in the ocean. The whirl, Donard one, administered unto the sick bhikkhu daily so long as he stayed in that place, and the governor of the city came to the Buddha to do him reverence, and having heard of the service which the Lord did in the vihara, asked the Blessed One about the previous existence of the sick monk, and the Buddha said, "In days gone by there was a wicked king who used to extort from his subjects all he could get, and he ordered one of his officers to lay the lash on a man of eminence. The officer, little thinking of the pain he inflicted upon others, obeyed. But when the victim of the king's wrath begged for mercy, he felt compassion and laid the whip lightly upon him. Now the king was reborn as Devadatta, who was abandoned by all his followers, because they were no longer willing to stand his severity, and he died miserable and full of penitence. The officer is the sick bhikkhu, who, having often given offense to his brethren in the vihara, was left without assistance in his distress. The eminent man, however, who was unjustly beaten and begged for mercy, was the bodhisattva. He has been reborn as the Tathagata. It is now the lot of the Tathagata to help the wretched officer as he had mercy on him. And the whirl, Donard one, repeated these lines: "He who inflicts pain on the gentle, or falsely accuses the innocent, will inherit one of the 10 great calamities. But he who has learned to suffer with patience will be purified, and will be the chosen instrument for the alleviation of suffering." The diseased bhikkhu, on hearing these words, turned to the Buddha, confessed his ill-natured temper and repented, and with a heart cleansed from error did reverence unto the Lord. The patient elephant, while the Blessed One was residing in the Jetavana, there was a householder living in Savatthi known to all his neighbors as patient and kind, but his relatives were wicked and contrived a plot to rob him. One day they came to the householder, and by worrying him with all kinds of threats took away a goodly portion of his property. He did not go to court, nor did he complain, but tolerated with great forbearance the wrongs he suffered. The neighbors wondered and began to talk about it, and rumors of the affair reached the ears of the brethren in Jetavana. While the brethren discussed the occurrence in the assembly hall, the Blessed One entered and asked, "What was the topic of your conversation?" And they told him. Said the Blessed One, "The time will come when the wicked relatives will find their punishment. O brethren, this is not the first time that this occurrence took place. It has happened before." And he told them a old tale. Once upon a time, when Brahmadatta was king of Benares, the Bodhisattva was born in the Himalaya region as an elephant. He grew up strong and big, and ranged the hills and mountains, the peaks and caves of the tortuous woods and the valleys. Once as he went, he saw a pleasant tree, and took his food standing under it. Then some impertinent monkeys came down out of the tree, and jumping on the elephant's back, insulted and tormented him greatly. They took hold of his tusks, pulled his tail, and disported themselves, thereby causing him much annoyance. The Bodhisattva, being full of patience, kindliness, and mercy, took no notice at all of their misconduct, which the monkeys repeated again and again. One day the spirit that lived in the tree, standing upon the tree trunk, addressed the elephant, saying, "My lord elephant, why dost thou put up with the impudence of these bad monkeys?" And he asked the question in a couplet as follows: "Why do you patiently endure each freak these mischievous and selfish monkeys wreak?" The Bodhisattva, on hearing this, replied, "If tree sprite, I cannot endure these monkeys' ill treatment without abusing their birth, lineage, and persons. How can I walk in the eightfold noble path? But these monkeys will do the same to others, thinking them to be like me. If they do it to any rogue elephant, he will punish them indeed, and I shall be delivered both from their annoyance and the guilt of having done harm to others." Saying this, he repeated another stanza: "If they will treat another one like me, he will destroy them, and I shall be free." A few days after, the Bodhisattva went elsewhere, and another elephant, a savage beast, came and stood in his place. The wicked monkeys, thinking him to be like the old one, climbed upon his back, and did as before. The rogue elephant seized the monkeys with his trunk, threw them upon the ground, gored them with his tusk, and trampled them to mincemeat under his feet. When the master had ended this teaching, he declared the truths, and identified the births, saying, "At that time the mischievous monkeys were the wicked relatives of the good man. The rogue elephant was the one who will punish them, but the virtuous noble elephant was the Tathagata himself in a former incarnation." After this discourse, one of the brethren rose and asked leave to propose a question, and when the permission was granted, he said, "I have heard the doctrine that wrong should be met with wrong, and evildoer should be checked by being made to suffer. For if this were not done, evil would increase and good would disappear. What shall we do?" Said the Blessed One, "Nay, I will tell you who have left the world and have adopted this glorious faith of putting aside selfishness. You shall not do evil for evil, nor return hate for hate. Neither think that you can destroy wrong by retaliating evil for evil, and thus increasing wrong. Leave the wicked to their fate, and their evil deeds will sooner or later in one way or another bring on their own punishment." And the Tathagata repeated these stanzas: "Who harms the man who does no harm, or strikes at him who strikes him not, shall soon some punishment incur which his own wickedness begot. One of the gravest ills in life, either a loathsome dread disease, or sad old age, or loss of mind, or wretched pain without surcease, or conflagration, loss of wealth, or of his nearest kin, he shall see some one die that's dear to him, and then he'll be reborn in hell." The last days, when the Blessed One was reciting on the mountain called Vulture's Peak, near Rajagaha, Ajatasattu, king of Magadha, who reigned in the place of Bimbisara, planned an attack on Vajjis, and he said to Vasikara, his prime minister, "I will root out the Vajjis, mighty though they be. I will destroy the Vajjis, I will bring them to utter ruin. Come now, O Brahman, and go to the Blessed One, inquire in my name for his health, and tell him my purpose. Bear carefully in mind what the Blessed One may say, and repeat it to me, for the Buddhas speak nothing untrue. When Vasikara, the Prime Minister, had greeted the Blessed One and delivered his message, the Venerable Ananda stood behind the Blessed One and fanned him, and the Blessed One said to him, Haste. Thou heard, Ananda, that the Vajjis hold full and frequent public assemblies. He replied, Lord, so I have heard. So long, Ananda. Said the Blessed One, as the Vajjis hold these full and frequent public assemblies, they may be expected not to decline, but to prosper, so long as they meet together in concord, so long as they honor their elders, so long as they respect womanhood, so long as they remain religious, performing all proper rites, so long as they extend the rightful protection, defense, and support to the holy ones, the Vajjis may be expected not to decline, but to prosper. Then the Blessed One addressed Vasikara and said, When I stayed, O Brahman, at Vasali, I taught the Vajjis these conditions of welfare, that so long as they should remain well instructed, so long as they will continue in the right path, so long as they live up to the precepts of righteousness, we could expect them not to decline, but to prosper. As soon as the king's messenger had gone, the Blessed One had the brethren, that were in the neighborhood of Rajagaha, assembled in the service hall and addressed them, saying, I will teach you, O Bhikkhus, the conditions of the welfare of a community. Listen well, and I will speak. So long, O Bhikkhus, as the brethren hold full and frequent assemblies, meeting in concord, rising in concord, and attending in concord to the affairs of the Sangha, so long as they, O Bhikkhus, do not abrogate that which experience has proved to be good, and introduce nothing except such things as have been carefully tested, so long as their elders practice justice, so long as the brethren esteem, revere, and support their elders, and hearken unto their words, so long as the brethren are not under the influence of craving, but delight in the blessings of religion, so that good and holy men shall come to them and dwell among them in quiet, so long as the brethren shall not be addicted to sloth and idleness, so long as the brethren shall exercise themselves in the sevenfold higher wisdom of mental activity, search after truth, energy, joy, modesty, self, control, earnest contemplation, and equanimity of mind, so long the Sangha may be expected to prosper. Therefore, O Bhikkhus, be full of faith, modest in heart, afraid of sin, anxious to learn, strong in energy, active in mind, and full of wisdom. Sariputta's Faith the Blessed One proceeded with a great company of the brethren to Nalanda, and there he stayed in a mango grove. Now the venerable Sariputta came to the place where the Blessed One was, and having saluted him, took his seat respectfully at his side, and said, Lord, such faith have I in the Blessed One, that methinks there never has been, nor will there be, nor is there now any other, who is greater or wiser than the Blessed One, that is to say, as regards the higher wisdom. Replied the Blessed One, Grand and bold are the words of thy mouth, Sariputta. Verily, thou hast burst forth into a song of ecstasy. Surely then thou hast known all the blessed ones who in the long ages of the past have been holy Buddhas. Not so, O Lord, said Sariputta. And the Lord continued, Then thou hast perceived all the blessed ones who in the long ages of the future shall be holy Buddhas. Not so, O Lord. But at least then, O Sariputta, thou knowest me as the holy Buddha now alive, and hast penetrated my mind. Not even that, O Lord. Thou seest then, Sariputta, that thou knowest not the hearts of the holy Buddhas of the past, nor the hearts of those of the future. Why, therefore, are thy words so grand and bold? Why burstest thou forth into such a song of ecstasy? O Lord, I have not the knowledge of the hearts of all the Buddhas that have been and are to come, and now are. I only know the lineage of the faith. Just as a king, Lord, might have a border city, strong in its foundations, strong in its ramparts, and with one gate only, and the king might have a watchman there, clever, expert, and wise, to stop all strangers and admit only friends, and on going over the approaches all about the city, he might not be able so to observe all the joints and crevices in the ramparts of that city, as to know where such a small creature as a cat could get out. That might well be, Yet all living beings of larger size that entered or left the city would have to pass through that gate. Thus only is it, Lord, that I know the lineage of the faith. I know that the holy Buddhas of the past, putting away all lust, ill will, sloth, pride, and doubt, knowing all those mental faults which make men weak, training their minds in the 4 kinds of mental activity, thoroughly exercising themselves in the 7-fold higher wisdom, receive the full fruition of enlightenment. And I know that the holy Buddhas of the times to come will do the same, and I know that the Blessed One, the holy Buddha of today, has done so now. Great is thy faith, O Sariputta, replied the Blessed One, but take heed that it be well grounded. The visit to Pataliputta. When the Blessed One had stayed as long as convenient at Nalanda, he went to Pataliputta, the frontier town of Magadha, and when the disciples at Pataliputta heard of his arrival, they invited him to their village rest house, and the Blessed One robed himself, took his bowl, and went with the brethren to the rest house. There he washed his feet, entered the hall, and seated himself against the center pillar, with his face towards the east. The brethren also, having washed their feet, entered the hall, and took their seats round the Blessed One, against the western wall, facing the east. And the lay devotees of Pataliputta, having also washed their feet, entered the hall, and took their seats opposite the Blessed One against the eastern wall, facing towards the west. Then the Blessed One addressed the lay disciples of Pataliputta, and he said, 5-fold, O householders, is the loss of the wrong doer through his want of rectitude. In the first place, wrong doer, devoid of rectitude, falls into great poverty through sloth. In the next place, his evil repute gets noised abroad. Thirdly, whatever society he enters, whether of Brahmins, nobles, heads of houses, or samanas, he enters shyly and confusedly. Fourthly, he is full of anxiety when he dies. And lastly, on the dissolution of the body after death, his mind remains in an unhappy state. Wherever his karma continues, there will be suffering and woe. This, O householders, is 5-fold loss of the evil doer. 5-fold, O householders, is the gain of the well doer through his practice of rectitude. In the first place, the well-doer, strong in rectitude, acquires property through his industry. In the next place, good reports of him are spread abroad. Thirdly, whatever society he enters, whether of nobles, Brahmins, heads of houses, or members of the order, he enters with confidence and self-possession. Fourthly, he dies without anxiety. And lastly, on the dissolution of the body after death, his mind remains in a happy state. Wherever his karma continues, there will be heavenly bliss and peace. This, O householders, is the 5-fold gain of the well-doer. When the Blessed One had taught the disciples, and incited them, and roused them, and gladdened them far into the night with religious edification, he dismissed them, saying, The night is far spent, O householders. It is time for you to do what ye deem most fit. Be it so, Lord, answered the disciples of Pataliputta, and rising from their seats, they bowed to the Blessed One, and keeping him on their right hand as they passed him, they departed thence. While the Blessed One stayed at Pataliputta, the king of Magadha sent a messenger to the governor of Pataliputta to raise fortifications for the security of the town. The Blessed One, seeing the laborers at work, predicted the future greatness of the place, saying, The men who build the fortress act as if they had consulted higher powers. For this city of Pataliputta will be a dwelling, place of busy men, and a center for the exchange of all kinds of goods. But 3 dangers hang over Pataliputta, that of fire, that of water, that of dissension. When the governor heard of the prophecy of Pataliputta's future, he greatly rejoiced and named the city, gate through which the Buddha had gone towards the river Ganges, the Gotama gate. Meanwhile, the people living on the banks of the Ganges arrived in great numbers to pay reverence to the Lord of the world, and many persons asked him to do them the honor to cross over in their boats. But the Blessed One, considering the number of the boats and their beauty, did not want to show any partiality, and by accepting the invitation of one to offend all the others, he therefore crossed the river without any boat, signifying thereby that the rafts of asceticism and the gaudy gondolas of religious ceremonies were not staunch enough to weather the storms of samsara, while the Tathagata can walk dry shod over the ocean of worldliness. And as the city gate was called after the name of the Tathagata, so the people called this passage of the river Gotama Ford. The mirror of truth, the Blessed One, proceeded to the village Natika with a great company of brethren, and there he stayed at the brick hall, and the venerable Ananda went to the Blessed One, and mentioning to him the names of the brethren and sisters that had died, anxiously inquired about their fate after death, whether they had been reborn in animals or in hell, or as ghosts, or in any place of woe. The Blessed One replied to Ananda and said, "Those who have died after the complete destruction of the three bonds of lust, of covetousness, and of the egotistical cleaving to existence, need not fear the state after death. They will not be reborn in a state of suffering. Their minds will not continue as a karma of evil deeds or sin, but are assured of final salvation. When they die, nothing will remain of them but their good thoughts, their righteous acts, and the bliss that proceeds from truth and righteousness. As rivers must at last reach the distant main, so their minds will be reborn in higher states of existence, and continue to be pressing on to their ultimate goal, which is the ocean of truth, the eternal peace of Nirvana. Men are anxious about death, and their fate after death, but consider, it is not at all strange, Ananda, that a human being should die. However, that thou shouldst inquire about them, and having heard the truth still be anxious about the dead, this is wearisome to the Blessed One. I will, therefore, teach thee the mirror of truth, and let the faithful disciple repeat it. Hell is destroyed for me, and rebirth as an animal, or a ghost, or in any place of woe. I am converted, I am no longer liable to be reborn in a state of suffering, and am assured of final salvation. What then, Ananda, is this mirror of truth? It is the consciousness that the elect disciple is in this world possessed of faith in the Buddha, believing the Blessed One to be the Holy One, the fully enlightened one, wise, upright, happy world, knowing supreme the bridler of men's wayward hearts, the teacher of gods and men, the blessed Buddha. It is further the consciousness that the disciple is possessed of faith in the truth, believing the truth to have been proclaimed by the Blessed One for the benefit of the world, passing not away, welcoming all, leading to salvation, to which through truth the wise will attain, each one by his own efforts. And finally, it is the consciousness that the disciple is possessed of faith in the order, believing in the efficacy of a union among those men and women who are anxious to walk in the noble eightfold path, believing this church of the Buddha, of the righteous, the upright, the just, the law-abiding, to be worthy of honor, of hospitality, of gifts, and of reverence, to be the supreme sowing, ground of merit for the world, to be possessed of the virtues beloved by the good, virtues unbroken, intact, unspotted, unblemished, virtues which make men truly free, virtues which are praised by the wise, are untarnished by the desire of selfish aims, either now or in a future life, or by the belief in the efficacy of outward acts, and are conducive to high and holy thought. This is the mirror of truth, which teaches the straightest way to enlightenment, which is the common goal of all living creatures. He who possesses the mirror of truth is free from fear. He will find comfort in the tribulations of life, and his life will be a blessing to all his fellow creatures. The Courtesan Ambapali then the Blessed One proceeded with a great number of brethren to Vaisali, and he stayed at the grove of the Courtesan Ambapali. And he said to the brethren, "Let a brother, O Bhikkhus, be mindful and thoughtful. Let a brother, whilst in the world, overcome the grief which arises from bodily craving, from the lust of sensations, and from the errors of wrong reasoning. Whatever you do, act always in full presence of mind. Be thoughtful in eating and drinking, in walking or standing, in sleeping or waking, while talking or being silent." When the Courtesan Ambapali heard that the Blessed One was staying in her mango grove, she was exceedingly glad, and went in a carriage as far as the ground was passable for carriages. There she alighted, and thence proceeding to the place where the Blessed One was, she took her seat respectfully at his feet on one side. As a prudent woman goes forth to perform her religious duties, so she appeared in a simple dress without any ornaments, yet beautiful to look upon. Blessed One thought to himself, "This woman moves in worldly circles, and is a favorite of kings and princes, yet is her heart calm and composed. Young in years, rich, surrounded by pleasures, she is thoughtful and steadfast. This, indeed, is rare in the world. Women, as a rule, are scant in wisdom and deeply immersed in vanity, but she, although living in luxury, has acquired the wisdom of a master, taking delight in piety, and able to receive the truth in its completeness. When she was seated, the Blessed One instructed, aroused, and gladdened her with religious discourse. As she listened to the law, her face brightened with delight. Then she rose and said to the Blessed One, "Will the Blessed One do me the honor of taking his meal, together with the brethren, at my house tomorrow?" And the Blessed One gave by silence his consent. Now the Likkhavi, a wealthy family of princely rank, hearing that the Blessed One had arrived at Vesali and was staying at Ambapali's grove, mounted their magnificent carriages and proceeded with their retinue to the place where the Blessed One was. The Likkhavi were gorgeously dressed in bright colors and decorated with costly jewels. And Ambapali drove up against the young Likkhavi, axle to axle, wheel to wheel, and yoke to yoke. And the Likkhavi said to Ambapali the courtesan, "How is it, Ambapali, that you drive up against us?" "Thus, my lords," said she, "I have just invited the Blessed One and his brethren for their tomorrow's meal." And the princes replied, "Ambapali, give up this meal to us for 100,000. My lords, were you to offer all Vesali with its subject territory, I would not give up so great an honor." Then the Likkhavi went on to Ambapali's grove. When the Blessed One saw the Likkhavi approaching in the distance, he addressed the brethren and said, "O brethren, let those of the brethren who have never seen the gods gaze upon this company of the Likkhavi, for they are dressed gorgeously like immortals." And when they had driven as far, the ground was passable for carriages. The Likkhavi alighted and went on foot to the place where the Blessed One was, taking their seats respectfully by his side. And when they were thus seated, the Blessed One instructed, aroused, and gladdened them with religious discourse. Then they addressed the Blessed One and said, "Will the Blessed One do us the honor of taking his meal, together with the brethren, at our palace tomorrow?" "O Likkhavi," said the Blessed One, "I have promised to dine tomorrow with Ambapali the courtesan." Then the Likkhavi, expressing their approval of the words of the Blessed One, arose from their seats and bowed down before the Blessed One, and, keeping him on their right hand as they passed him, they departed thence. But when they came home, they cast up their hands, saying, "A worldly woman has outdone us. We have been left behind by a frivolous girl." At the end of the night, Ambapali, the courtesan, made ready in her mansion sweet rice and cakes, and on the next day announced through a messenger the time to the Blessed One, saying, "The hour, Lord, has come, and the meal is ready." And the Blessed One robed himself early in the morning, took his bowl, and went with the brethren to the place where Ambapali's dwelling house was. And when they had come there, they seated themselves on the seats prepared for them. Ambapali, the courtesan, set the sweet rice and cakes before the order, with the Buddha at their head, and waited upon them till they refused to take more. When the Blessed One had finished his meal, the courtesan had a low stool brought, and sat down at his side, and addressed the Blessed One, and said, "Lord, I present this mansion to the order of Bhikkhus, of which the Buddha is the chief." And the Blessed One accepted the gift, and after instructing, arousing, and gladdening her with religious edification, he rose from his seat and departed thence. The Buddha's farewell. When the Blessed One had remained as long as he wished at Ambapali's grove, he went to Beluva, near Vesali. There the Blessed One addressed the brethren, and said, "O mendicants, take up your abode for the rainy season round about Vesali, each one according to the place where his friends and near companions may live. I shall enter upon the rainy season here at Beluva." When the Blessed One had thus entered upon the rainy season, there fell upon him a dire sickness, and sharp pains came upon him even unto death. But the Blessed One, mindful and self-possessed, bore his ailments without complaint. Then this thought occurred to the Blessed: "It would not be right for me to pass away from life without addressing the disciples, without taking leave of the order. Let me now, by a strong effort of the will, subdue this sickness, and keep my hold on life till the allotted time have come." And the Blessed One, by a strong effort of the will, subdued the sickness, and kept his hold on life till the time he fixed upon should come, and the sickness abated. Thus the Blessed One began to recover, and when he had quite got rid of the sickness, he went out from the monastery and sat down on a seat spread out in the open air. And the Venerable Ananda, accompanied by many other disciples, approached where the Blessed One was, saluted him, and taking a seat respectfully on one side, said, "I have beheld, Lord, how the Blessed One was in health, and I have beheld how the Blessed One had to suffer. And though at the sight of the sickness of the Blessed One my body became weak as a creeper, and the horizon became dim to me, and my faculties were no longer clear, yet notwithstanding I took some little comfort from the thought that the Blessed One would not pass away from existence until at least he had left instructions as touching the order. The Blessed One addressed Ananda in behalf of the order, saying, "What then, Ananda, does the order expect of me? I have preached the truth without making any distinction between doctrine hidden or revealed, for in respect of the truth, Ananda, the Tathagata has no such thing as the closed fist of a teacher, who keeps some things back. Surely, Ananda, should there be any one who harbor the thought, 'It is I who will lead the brotherhood,' or 'the order is dependent upon me,' he should lay down instructions in any matter concerning the order. Now the Tathagata, Ananda, thinks not that it is he who should lead the brotherhood, or that the order is dependent upon him. Why, then, should the Tathagata leave instructions in any matter concerning the order? I am now grown old, O Ananda, and full of years. My journey is drawing to its close. I have reached the sum of my days. I am turning 80 years of age. Just as a worn-out cart cannot be made to move along without much difficulty, so the body of the Tathagata can only be kept going with much additional care. It is only when the Tathagata, Ananda, ceasing to attend to any outward thing, becomes plunged in that devout meditation of heart which is concerned with no bodily object. It is only then that the body of the Tathagata is at ease. Therefore, O Ananda, be ye lamps unto yourselves, rely on yourselves, and do not rely on external help. Hold fast to the truth as a lamp. Seek salvation alone in the truth. Look not for assistance to any one besides yourselves. And how, Ananda, can a brother be a lamp unto himself? Rely on himself only and not on any external help, holding fast to the truth as his lamp, and seeking salvation in the truth alone, looking not for assistance to any one besides himself. Herein, O Ananda, let a brother, as he dwells in the body, so regard the body that he, being strenuous, thoughtful, and mindful, may, whilst in the world, overcome the grief which arises from the body's cravings. While subject to sensations, let him continue so to regard the sensations that he, being strenuous, thoughtful, and mindful, may, whilst in the world, overcome the grief which arises from the sensations. And so, also, when he thinks or reasons or feels, let him so regard his thoughts that being strenuous, thoughtful, and mindful he may, whilst in the world, overcome the grief which arises from the craving due to ideas, or to reasoning, or to feeling. Those who, either now or after I am dead, shall be lamps unto themselves, relying upon themselves only, and not relying upon any external help, but holding fast to the truth as their lamp, and seeking their salvation in the truth alone, and shall not look for assistance to any one besides themselves. It is they, Ananda, among my Bhikkhus, who shall reach the very topmost height. But they must be anxious to learn. The Buddha announces his death, said the Tathagata to Ananda. In former years, Ananda, Mara, the evil one, approached the holy Buddha 3 times to tempt him. And now, Ananda, Mara, the evil one, came again today to the place where I was, and, standing beside me, addressed me in the same words as he did when I was resting under the shepherd's nigrod tree on the bank of the Naranjara river. Be greeted, thou holy one. Thou hast attained the highest bliss, and it is time for thee to enter into the final Nirvana. And when Mara had thus spoken, Ananda, I answered him and said, Make thyself happy, O wicked one. Final extinction of the Tathagata shall take place before long. The Venerable Ananda addressed the Blessed One and said, Vouchsafe, Lord, to remain with us. O Blessed One, I, for the good and happiness of the great multitudes, out of pity for the world, for the good and the gain of mankind, said the Blessed One. Enough now, Ananda, beseech not the Tathagata. And again, a second time, the Venerable Ananda besought the Blessed One in the same words. He received from the Blessed One the same reply. And again, the third time, the Venerable Ananda besought the Blessed One to live longer, and the Blessed One said, Haste thou faith, Ananda, said Ananda, I have my Lord. The Blessed One, seeing the quivering eyelids of Ananda, read the deep grief in the heart of his beloved disciple, and he asked again, "Hast thou indeed faith, Ananda?" And Ananda said, "I have faith, my lord." Then the Blessed One continued, "If thou hast faith, Ananda, in the wisdom of the Tathagata, why then, Ananda, dost thou trouble the Tathagata even until the third time? Have I not formerly declared to you that it is in the very nature of all compound things that they must be dissolved again? We must separate ourselves from all things near and dear to us, and must leave them. How then, Ananda, can it be possible for me to remain, since everything that is born, or brought into being, and organized, contains within itself the inherent necessity of dissolution? How, then, can it be possible that this body of mine should not be dissolved? No such condition can exist. And this mortal existence, O Ananda, has been relinquished, cast away, renounced, rejected, and abandoned by the Tathagata. And the Blessed One said to Ananda, "Go now, Ananda, and assemble in service hall such of the brethren as reside in the neighborhood of Vesali." Then the Blessed One proceeded to the service hall, and sat down there on the mat spread out for him. And when he was seated, the Blessed One addressed the brethren, and said, "O brethren, ye to whom the truth has been made known, having thoroughly made yourselves masters of it, practice it, meditate upon it, and spread it abroad, in order that pure religion may last long and be perpetuated, in order that it may continue for the good and happiness of the great multitudes, out of pity for the world, and to the good and gain of all living beings. Star gazing and astrology, forecasting lucky or unfortunate events by signs, prognosticating good or evil, all these are things forbidden. He who lets his heart go loose without restraint shall not attain Nirvana. Therefore must we hold the heart in check, and retire from worldly excitements, and seek tranquillity of mind. Eat your food to satisfy your hunger, and drink to satisfy your thirst. Satisfy the necessities of life, like the butterfly that sips the flower, without destroying its fragrance or its texture. It is through not understanding and grasping the four truths, O brethren, that we have gone astray so long and wandered in this weary path of transmigrations, both you and I, until we have found truth. Practice the earnest meditations I have taught you. Continue in the great struggle against sin. Walk steadily in the roads of saintship. Be strong in moral powers. Let the organs of your spiritual sense be quick. When the 7 kinds of wisdom enlighten your mind, you will find the noble, eightfold path that leads to Nirvana. Behold, O brethren, the final extinction of the Tathagata will take place before long. I now exhort you, saying, all component things must grow old and be dissolved again. Seek ye for that which is permanent, and work out your salvation with diligence.